I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
I'm not even supposed to be here today! Oh, fuck you!
Come on, you want me to drive? You're supposed to be suicidal. Remember, I'll
Anybody
drive.
a drive?
Get in the car.
Fuck me in the ass. Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt.
Hey everyone, it's Donji Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review. And this review is going to be for the third entry of the Naked Gun trilogy, the final of these review series before we do the new film. And that is going to be for the Naked Gun 33 and a third, or the final insult, or really just short, the Naked Gun 3. Yeah, what was originally for a while was the final entry of the Naked Gun series, intended so, but they were trying to do a fourth one that was direct-to-video, but then it never happened, and never happened when they tried to do it without Leslie Nielsen, because when they were trying to make it, Leslie Nielsen had sadly passed away in 2011. Around that time, but it just never marshalized, and that fourth film is now that, well, legacy reboot sequel with Liam Neeson that came out. But now it's time to review the third and final entry of the original series, and what's the plot of this film? So, Frank Drebin has now retired from the police squad, and he's tasted the fruit of his labor with his wife, Jane Spencer, played by Priscilla Presley, who's a maladroit. Now pretty much, he's maladroit and now retired from the force. He secretly dreams, though, of getting back in action, and then eventually his old partners, Ed Hockett and Nordberg, have to enlist the help of their loose cannon friend. And then Rocco, played by Fred Ward, our new antagonist of this movie, the deranged terrorist, is going to blow up the Animal Academy Awards to smithereens. So once more, Drebin goes undercover and interrogates dangerous blonde bombshells and puts his precise but fragile marriage in jeopardy. So are this year's Oscars going to be doomed to disaster? Well, I guess we find out. So as for my reaction, so you guys already know by this because I reviewed these films. I love these first two movies a lot. I think I love them equally. And I consider both of them some of the best comedies of all time. Now when it comes to the third film, right here that we're talking about, I could say it's definitely good. But to be fair, you can kind of see why they stopped after this film, because this movie is kind of a bit of a step down from the first two. I mean, there's still some funny scenes in the film, but they just don't feel as like fresh. The funny scenes in this didn't feel as fresh or funny as they did in the first two movies. I mean, it kind of felt like they started to kind of use up their ideas here, and it kind of makes sense they stopped here. Because they kind of realized they couldn't really come up with anything else after this film, so they at the time made this the last one. At the time they did. And some jokes do kind of feel recycled, and they're just not as fresh here. I mean, what I will say is this. It starts off funny in the first half. It's not till, like, Jane kind of leaves Frank, and then he goes back to police squad, and when he goes to prison for a bit, it kind of does get weak in the middle. And then when the Oscars happen, the movie picks up again. Like, so the first and third acts are what make the film. It's the middle act I'm not really the biggest fan of. There just wasn't much funny stuff in the middle acts. So, when it came to filming this, production had taken place in the Los Angeles metropolitan area between August and November 1993, and of course, one other flaw I do have with this film, it's the only film in the series that's not directed by David Zucker. It's directed by Peter Siegel instead. Now, Peter Siegel has directed comedies I liked. I liked Anger Management. I did like 50 First Dates. I do like Tommy Boy. He's directed those films, and those were good movies. But to be fair, I think the series just feels a little more fresh when David Zucker was involved. David Zucker received credit for writing the screenplay, like similar to the other entry in the series, and Jim Abrahams and Jerry Zucker, though, did not write the film's script. They did return as executive producers, and they received writing credits because they had contributed to Police Squad and the first film. And of course, then another interesting fact, in the opening scene, like, that woman with the carriage is actually played by Susan Breslow, who was the sister of the Zucker brothers. And like Peter Siegel also has some minor roles in the film and in voiceover. And another interesting thing, like the dream sequence does parody the shootout from The Untouchables from 1987. And when it came to the role of Tanya Peters, Pamela Anderson was offered a role, but it turned down because of scheduling conflicts. And the role went to Anna Nicole Smith. So now, like, more about the kind of the title here. The 33 1/3 is actually a reference to revolutions per minute in the number. So, and of course, when it comes to the cast, like most of the cast obviously most of the cast returned for this one. The late Leslie Nielsen returns as Frank Drebin, and this was the last time he would play the role. Priscilla Presley comes back for one last time as Jane Spencer. And this is also the last feature film presence from O.J. Simpson, because after this film, he murdered a few people and went to jail. And of course, George Kennedy does come back as Ed Hawken. And he has some new cast members that joined the cast. You got Fred Ward, you got Anna Nicole Smith, and Kathleen Freeman. I think this Fred Ward who was in Tremors. Was he in Tremors? I'll find the deed. I think this was the Fred Ward, because when I did the postal review, guys, I mixed up the Wards with Zach Ward and Fred Ward, and I thought Zach Ward was the Ward that appeared in Tremors, and then I realized it was actually Fred Ward who did, but, oh yeah, here it is. Where is it? Fred Ward. Yeah! Fred Ward from Tremors actually plays one of the villains in this movie. Right there, like one of the villains that wants to blow up the Academy Awards ceremony, which I will admit is a nice idea for a third film. Going to the Oscars is actually not a bad idea. So, the movie was, after being shot and marketed, was released on March 1994. And this one got mixed reviews from critics, and it didn't do as well at the box office. It did decently fine, but not like strong at the box office like its predecessors, because it made back about $132 million worldwide on a $30 million budget. So yeah. This is the only entry in a series directed by Peter Siegel, and before I get on to that stuff, this is the good qualities in the story and why the movie's still good, even though it's a bit weaker from the first two. Peter Siegel still does try to make an entertaining spoof comedy that's based on the series Police Squad, when it's the third and final send-off of the series, well, at the time it was. Leslie Nielsen still does good in the role, and the cast still looks like they're having a great time. And I have to say, like, pretty much for a comedy trilogy, you know how most comedy trilogies often get worse and worse as they progress, or the third one or the second one could be good, and then the third one is where it gets bad. This, though, is not the case. Yeah, this is a step down, but it's still a good movie. It just has a bit of a weak middle half. And then it gets better again once they get to the Oscars. It starts off pretty funny in the first half, don't get me wrong. It's the middle act is just kind of the problem. So, this ended up being one of the best comedy trilogies. Like, Leslie Nielsen never stopped with a laugh, definitely never stopped with the laughter, and his great performance as Frank, and this was a perfect send-off for the character. Priscilla Presley still did a fantastic job, and of course, like, has this Thelma and Louise friendship with Ellen Greene was actually also pretty memorable in the middle act of the film, and Nicole Smith is actually pretty amusing in the film. And the crime game parody is actually pretty good, and there are still some great spoofs and jokes in the film, and this is kind of like a good, interesting setup here for the Frank Drebin's final appearance. Frank Drebin has to come out of retirement and help the police squad plot to bomb the Oscars, which I did like. Yeah, which is a good idea for your send off for the character. This guy pretty much had to stop an assassination on the Queen. This guy had to stop an assassination on his speaker, and now for the third one, to send it off, have him stop his assassination at the Oscars. That's a perfect idea if you're going to send out this character. Have him stop something big and like maybe raise a little stakes, like so have him stop the Oscar ceremony. Like this actually does kind of raise the stakes for a finale. Like the Oscars are one big event. Right here, where he had to stop assassination on certain people. Like this time around, it's where technically speaking, there's assassination on a bunch of people because that bomb in the second one was being planted in a ballroom. And this time around, it's placed in another room full of guests, and this time it's a much bigger worldwide event, the Oscars. And like the first two films, it still does have some non-stop laughs from start to finish. That do send people laughing their heads off, and there's still some deadpan slapstick humor that keeps you entertained. Definitely no shortage of surprise to keep you engaged, and heck, you even get some good appearances like from the late James Earl Jones. And it's definitely nice to see the late James Earl Jones in appearance at the Oscars in the Oscars bit when they're getting to the Best Pictures bit and the bomb is about to be revealed. Like, I definitely like seeing the late James Earl Jones. May he rest in peace. You got Rachel Welch and Marielle Hemingway during the sequence. So how do we start off the film? So we start off with this opening throwback of the Untouchables, right there, and then of course. And at first, like, it is a pretty funny opening scene, and then you find out it's all a dream, and Frank ends up malfunctioning him and Jane's bed, and it flips up, and like, the first act is funny. Like, the first act still has me laughing, and you find out that Frank has retired from police squad, and he's living a happy life with Jane after they finally reconciled in the second film. But Frank is miserable with his house husband life, and he has to go to marriage counseling with Jane, and he pretty much wishes that he could be on the force. And you even see at one point he's shopping, and he messes up with the bags when trying to bag cucumbers that he's buying, or what else can I think of her? Fails to, like, some of the people know he's on the force. They try telling him to stop his robbery, but he obviously is neglectful of it. And so I like where this is going. Like, Frank's actually retired from police squad, but he's miserable and he wants to get back to it. So I like that Frank's kind of going through a bit of a midlife crisis. And then, of course, it's 6 months after he retired. Like, he gets visited by Ed and Norberg, and they ask for his help with an investigation. And he's like giving them cupcakes and coffee, and of course, they find out that police squad had learned that this bomber named Rocco Dillion that had been incarcerated was hired by terrorists to conduct a bombing against the United States. So, and Frank remembers Rocco's girlfriend, Tanya Peters, from investigation, and he agrees to help Ed and Norberg visit the client where Peter works. And in this scene, you do get a throwback to Zucker's most iconic parody film, Airplane, from 1980. Right here, like, it's not the disco scene. You still have Staying Alive playing in the background. No, it's not the dance scene in that scene. It's just kind of like the whole club setting and the whole entrance and their kind of whole costumes. And there's like, Norberg does have this like big giant puffy wig that makes it impossible for him to really enter through. And to be fair, that scene was kind of That gig wasn't really too funny. I mean, the stuff in the store, the Untouchables dream sequence and the whole bed malfunctioning, like, and the title sequence are funny. When you have the car like going through the title sequence, and this time it goes through a hockey arena for one of its weird entrances, and then, of course, it's around this act when the film doesn't really get too funny around this act. And it's when Frank goes to this clinic, and while he's there, while he's pretty much there, it turns out it's a sperm donor place. And you get this repeated gag of a lot of noises going off, and Frank has to put in the sperm stuff. And for a while, that gag does kind of get a bit repetitive. And it just doesn't feel as fresh. I mean, because they kind of repeat it a few times. And he then writes Tanya's address on a handkerchief, but then he loses it just as he's about to give it to Ed. And then Frank is exhausted from what he had to do. But then Jane comes home, and it turns out sees that he's doing police work again. But Frank lies and says he has an affair, so he kind of messes up his marriage with Jane again. Like, that's another problem I have with the film. Like, it kind of just repeats what they did with the second film with him and Jane. And of course, that kind of has them almost go their separate ways for a little bit again. Like, we kind of already saw this in the second film. Like, why do they need to go their separate ways again? Like, like once they like become a couple at the end of the first film, and then suddenly they go their separate ways from the second film, but then they become a couple again, and then the third one they just kind of go their separate ways again. Like they kind of repeated this. They kind of just repeated that plot element. That was something that did kind of annoy me a little bit. Like it really just kind of just made the ending of the second film kind of really pointless for a little while. Yeah, they do get back together, but still. And so she moves out of their house, and so Frank now realizes he's alone, and he agrees to go undercover in prison so he can befriend Dylan and learn the details of the bombing. And so he gets put in Rocco's cell under the name Nick the Slasher, McGurk. Anyone's trust after he protects the escape plan from this guard and causes a riot over some prison food. And then Rocco and Frank escape through a tunnel in their cell, and they get picked up on the outside by Muriel, Rocco's mother, our other antagonist. So at Rocco's hideout, Frank tries to get information on the bombing out of Rocco and his mother, but they're suspicious of him and they don't want to share details. So, while funny for the first bits, the film starts to kind of lack the same charm as the first two once it kind of gets to this act. And it kind of does. There's times when they kind of rely too much on the sexual innuendos and the silly gags in this film, and the characters kind of look like they just lack depth in this movie. There's still some like good scenes with Frank at the grocery store, or when he's kind of loses the note, but the gag of him having to put in the sperm containers kind of got a little repetitive because they kind of repeated it a bit. Or when Frank tries to bust out of jail, or Frank and his wife sneak into the Emmys under like weird Alabama White. Like the Emmys part was definitely funny. Like it does open up with a funny spoof of The Untouchables. And there's plenty more films that do get spoofed, like White Heat, Great Escape, and Thelma and Louise. That's definitely fun for those who get the references to those films, but it doesn't really matter if one doesn't realize another film is being referenced, but they're funny in their own rights. And the references aren't as frequent here. Though, like, once again, it's not like Seltzer and Freeberg. Like, these references are minor. They don't hog up the plot of the film, and it is still trying to parody cop films. At the very least, it's not trying to be those bad parody films. At the very least. But sometimes the humor does feel a little forced at times, and scenes when it's not really that funny, like, and it doesn't matter if it's like trying to be silly or fun, but it still does succeed at some of that stuff. And that's the thing, Frank doesn't really catch a break, does he? Like, he loses his wife again, and then has to go to prison, and has to disguise time and time, and then end up in a lousy home with this threatening criminal and his mom. And then have to defuse another bomb at the academy. The slapstick comedy of the film, also does kind of feel the weakest, and there's some of the gags are good, and like the movie does pick up again when him and Jane do reunite. The movie does finally get interesting once you get to the Oscars, because I kind of like seeing like the Oscars and stuff, and you have this and there's a nice appearance from the late Arlie Ermey in the prison sequence. May he also rest in peace. And of course, like, the ending is not bad. And of course, though, meanwhile, when it gets to Jane, who had just left Frank, Jane and her friend Louise, like, they're on this, like, Thelma and Louise, like, journey. And if you all remember that film, Thelma and Louise, like, they kind of have this Thelma and Louise, like, friendship where it references that movie. You know, like, when Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon had hit the road in that film. Like, they're on this road trip together when Jane finds this handkerchief with Tanya's address on it. And believing Frank is truthful about the affair, Jane is going to go drive cross-country to find Frank. And so Frank arrives Frank answers the door and she arrives and has to cover for her. And he tells the Dylans that Jane is this random stranger and to keep her as a hostage. But Rocco then reveals his plan to Frank about the Oscars, where he's going to attack. It's when he's going to start off the bomb. Is once they get to the best picture envelope, then he's going to activate the bomb. But then, of course, like, Frank and Jane do kind of reconcile around this bit. So then the film does pick up again. It does finally get interesting again after this. So they get to the awards, and Frank traps Muriel in the car, and then sneaks in with Jane to go find the bomb. And of course, like, though, at first they're denied entry because they don't look like celebrities. So they have to take this guy's a Weird Al in his day, and they're able to get in. And they have to go find through a bunch of envelopes. And obviously there's way too many envelopes, so it does take a bit of a while. And they're frantically searching for the bomb. And Frank, though, like, and they do get some funny bits here where Frank, like, inflicts his usual antics on stage during the show, like whether he lands on the stairs or falls on the stairs on the stage. And then he encounters Tanya backstage, and she's trying to distract Frank by seducing him. But then, of course, she reveals that she kind of has a dick, and then this makes Frank. And he flees immediately. But he bursts on the stage, and he's trying to stop the bomb from detonating, but he ends up in a stalemate with Rocco, and then drops his electronic sign that takes out Muriel, and then. So, Rocco's mom is dead, and Rocco is horrified by this, and he decides that he's going to detonate the bomb and die with his mother because with his mother gone, he clearly doesn't have much left to live for. And, like, this is around the time when, like, the late James Earl Jones makes an appearance in the film. It's when he's playing himself, fictional version of himself that's about to announce the Best Picture winner. And when they do, these guys start dancing up. Like, some of the entrances when they get their awards are funny. Like, some of them, whenever they go up on stage, they, like, do cartwheels to go on stage, or they start, like, dancing crazy, and then Rocco shows up. No, back in your seats, all four of you. And then, of course, like, though, when after, like, all the stuff I mentioned, then Rocco's gonna detonate the bomb as a suicide mission this time. Frank then is able to launch Rocco and the bomb into the catwalks above the stage. And Frank then also snares him with a cable and slings him through the roof of the arena, and he crashes into Pavsmear's helicopter, and the bomb explodes and they both die. And so the Oscars are saved. And then Frank and Jane finally reaffirm their love to the applause of the audience and viewers worldwide. So, like, the final act taking place at Oscars in Hollywood is a nice touch. And, like, now we get a slew of cool cameos. Like, James Earl Jones was the best cameo, easily. And these, like, comedy flicks really respect the heck out of the runtimes with, like, the 80 minutes of length. Like, they're not trying to overdrag, and they're not overly long. And, like, even though, like, the humor is not as good as the other two, because this one just kind of results in vulgarity for cheap laughs with, like, the boob jokes and the sperm jokes. I mean, the boobs joke at the grocery store is funny because, like, the first act and the third act are the funny stuff. The middle act is kind of feels stale. Like, the funny stuff for me is the first half of the film. Like, it's kind of just when he gets to the sperm area, is where it gets weak. I mean, as cool as to see Arlie Ermy in the prison sequence, like, the prison sequence and the sperm clinic and the criminals' house, like, those acts weren't really that interesting. It was until, like, him and Jane reunite when the movie finally picked up again. That's kind of the thing. I definitely did like this whole finale here. Like, this whole finale at the Oscars definitely did feel like an actually good little perfect way for your character to go out. I think this actually felt like a final act in the finale movie. Like, this is a comedy parody series, but you actually do feel but here they actually do try to make you feel a little bit of tension for this Oscar thing blowing up, and you actually do kind of somewhat feel like, yeah, now you know Frank obviously won't die because they can't kill Frank off. This is a comedy series. Like, you do kind of feel some tension for Frank in this whole scenario. Like, some of these antics, while they're funny, like, they actually kind of lead to some tension because he might fail to stop the bomb. So this is the final act that actually the other final acts in the first two don't make you feel much tension, but this one actually does kind of try to do that. So I did like they try to give you a little bit of tension, like, no, and actually kind of treat this whole Oscars thing as actually kind of a threat. Because this is a whole worldwide group of people this time around. Like, the others were kind of like just either one person or just a ballroom of people. Like, this is a worldwide event that he actually basically has to stop from happening. And of course, like, he also pretty much has to deal with some real life stuff. Like, retiring from work and missing work. Like what they did with Bob and The Incredibles. Frank is going through this midlife crisis and he misses the old days. I really like that. Right there. So, now we pretty much get on with the finale and how it ends. So, as you found out throughout the film, like, Jane was expecting a child, and Frank was about to become a dad, and then he cut to 9 months later after saving the Oscars, and Frank and Norberg do run to a delivery room to witness the birth of Frank's child. But Norberg leads them into the wrong room, and then Frank is showing a baby with dark skin, and he chases Norberg out furious, but then Ed comes out of another room with Jane as this is happening, and she's holding their real baby. And because, well, The Naked Gun 2025 is somewhat of a legacy sequel, and you found out, and as you saw in the teaser, Liam Neeson was the son of this character, Frank Durbin. Like, Liam Neeson's character's name is Frank Durbin Jr., so now after that new film, you obviously kind of know now at this rate that that's obviously going to grow up to be Liam Neeson's character. Which you now kind of know at this rate, since you find out in the teaser that that's his son. Because in the teaser, because in the teaser, you saw at the end of the teaser, Liam Neeson's Frank Durbin Jr. was visiting a memorial that had the Frank Durbin from these movies. Right there was a kind of a tribute to Leslie Nielsen and how he misses his dad, and misses his dad. It's this memorial of the characters from the other movies. So, yeah, it's Frank Durbin. It's pretty much now Frank Durbin Jr. That's boring. And now he's gonna become the new Frank Durbin with this new film. We'll see how. I don't know if they'll probably make another one. Maybe they will, but it might depend on the box office. But I think the box office opening weekend was $17 million for that film. So I'm not sure, but we'll have to see. I mean, I haven't seen the movie yet. I haven't watched it yet because the reason why is because I needed to do these. I can't just watch that film right away without watching these. I need to review these first. Then I'll watch that film. But yeah, now I've watched all three of these movies. And this was how the series originally ended. Now the trilogy as a whole ends. Now Frank can finally be with Jane for real this time. Now has a son of his own. He saved the Oscars from blowing up. And now it's a son that you all know by now is Liam Neeson's character in a new movie that released. But then more comedy is found because Norbert ends up showing the wrong kid. And then Fred chased him out. Which, to be fair, even that bit didn't really feel all that funny, really. Yeah. So now we get on with the bad guys of the film. So, I mentioned before, the humor in this one, it's not as funny in this one. Jane in this one does feel a little less likable here. And her dumping Frank in the middle act kind of made the second movie pointless. Even though they do get back together at the end. And the three villains like Fred Ward, Kathleen Freeman, and Anna Nicole Smith, they're just kind of really weak antagonists. That's the thing. They're planning to blow up stuff with bombs. As kind of a tension area like Oscars is, it's kind of just a stupid thing. They kind of did the whole bomb thing in the second film a little better. They don't really have, they don't get much of a reason to do this crap because they just establish that these guys are just a bunch of jackasses. And the middle act, when he has to go to prison, or when he has to go to the sperm place, it's where the movie does get a little stale. Okay, that's the kind of thing. And it also did kind of make sense for them to kind of stop here. Because I think they clearly recognized that they couldn't do anything else. They were kind of starting to lose their steam when they were making this. And so they clearly knew they wouldn't be able to make a fourth. It probably wouldn't work. So I can see why this was supposed to be the last one. So yeah, those reasons are kind of why this movie is a bit of a step down from the first two, but it's still a good send-off for the original series. I'm still going to check out that Liam Neeson film, though. Don't worry. So in the end, yeah, as weak as kind of Naked Gun 33 1/3 is, it's still worth a watch and buy because it's still a good comedy sequel. It still provides a good send-off for Frank Durbin. And it's a good send-off for Leslie Nielsen for the late Leslie Nielsen's time in the franchise. Just don't expect to laugh as much as the first two, because it's just not as fresh as the first two is all. But still a good movie. Anyways, that's it for my review of The Naked Gun 33 1/3. And we're going to rank The Naked Gun 33 1/3. Here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you want to see the grand send-off for Frank on his final case, then I would totally watch it by The Naked Gun 33 1/3 for your collection for sure, no doubt. But don't expect something like the first two of this movie. And if we're going to rank The Naked Gun 33 1/3, I'm going to give The Naked Gun 33 1/3 an 8 out of 10. Alright, there we go, guys. That wraps up officially my review for The Naked Gun 33 1/3, and I just got through all three of these movies in the trilogy. It takes care of that. Now I can go watch that new film. Maybe either tonight or tomorrow before I go up north. We'll see what the plan is. But, yeah. And now you're kind of wondering, how's this week been? It's been alright. I mean, what really kind of wrecked what kind of did really wreck was bad news for me to hear this week is Fabio getting terminated. For no reason. That really just kind of hurt the week for me because because I honestly think Fabio's a funny YouTube reviewer that did not deserve to get terminated. For just for saying some minor stuff. Like, this happened a lot of times. Like, it's just so annoying how people, how actually bad YouTubers who've actually done illegal stuff that would get them in big trouble are allowed to keep their channels, despite all the bad stuff and all the times they get arrested for doing some of this stuff. Like prank YouTube channels. Like, a lot of YouTube pranksters have gone to prison, they still get to keep their channels. Like, that's so annoying. But if you say but saying one thing, you're automatically shut off. Like, one harmless little thing. Like, that really sucks. Because I like Fabio as a YouTuber. I thought he made aka the Italian Stallion 51. But I thought he made a lot of great reviews. All of his rants were funny, all his reviews were funny. Stinks. But until then, that'll be it for this review. Tell me in the comments down below what you guys think about the Naked Gun 33 1/3. Thank you all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.